Hi, this is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do? And today's guest is Katie Gundersen. And Katie, what do you do?
What do I do? Which hat would you like me to talk about today?
No, I want you to talk about your occupational therapy hat.
That's my primary hat, yes. I am a semi-retired occupational therapist. That is, I retired in 2012 from full-time work, but I have a private practice that's been going since long before I retired, still going now, and that's my professional side. The other side, teaching dance, doing all kinds of other things in the community, but my profession is occupational therapy.
Let me ask you, what made you go into it? I was thinking about this, because I've known you've done this for years. What made you go into it?
I have to go back to when I was about 16, working as a candy striper at a hospital in Illinois where I lived at the time. There was a clinic that was never open when I was there working. It had a glass window in the door, and whenever I peeked in there, I saw floor looms, knitting materials, coloring materials, all kinds of craft-related stuff. I had been seriously thinking about going into music therapy, but I was really interested in what was in that room, which I could never get to. And there was a sign outside the door that said occupational therapy. So when I was trying to make up my mind what I wanted to do and where to go to college, I contacted both the Music Therapy Association and the American Occupational Therapy Association, found out what was required in both forms of study, where the primary amount of work was, and because I have an extensive music background, I was afraid that if I did music for a profession, I would start to hate it. It was one of my major outlets. So I looked at occupational therapy and was fascinated by the fact that it worked with, as we jokingly say, from womb to tomb. So anything from birth to death and everything in between. Fascinating ability to make a major impact on people's lives with daily function and helping people to be who they want to be. That caught my attention. I proceeded to apply to a couple of different schools, got into the University of Iowa, which had a major OT program and also had a major music department because I didn't want to be far away from music. Wound up going to Iowa, got my bachelor's there, and got my certification after I graduated from there, and I've been in the clinic ever since.
You know, you had it together.
You think so?
At that age, you know, I mean, most of us had absolutely no idea what we wanted to do.
My mother had been a nurse's aide long ago, and so something in medicine always caught my fancy. That whole side of the family is full of doctors and people in medicine in one form or another. So I think there's something genetic in it for me too.
I mean, I was thinking when you were talking, I was thinking about me, and I thought, I don't remember. You know, we had the 5 professions growing up, and I went as a candy striper to work in the hospital. I was there a day or two, and I thought, no,
not for you.
I knew it immediately. I knew I didn't have it. You know how you just know you're, so I didn't have it.
You feel comfortable or you don't?
I was very uncomfortable, really very uncomfortable. And I've known you a long time. And
yes, we have known each other a long time.
And I thought I never talked to her about that. So tell me, and the other thing is, you said from cradle to
from womb to tomb.
Womb to tomb. What do you do as an occupational therapist in the womb or the baby? Because when I think of occupational therapy, I think about it for adults.
Yes. A better way to think about it is why we are called occupational therapists in the first place. The term occupation means different things to different people. It's oftentimes associated with what people do to make money. Instead, in our field, what we think of in terms of occupations are things that are meaningful to our daily life. So, for example, occupations might be, for you, a yoga student, a car driver, a homeowner, a pet owner. Those are occupations. For me, a dancer, musician, a member of the community, member of various kinds of organizations, those are occupations as well. So the bottom line is, what is it that makes life meaningful for you? And if we think about functional behavior, we have to be able to be functional in order to engage in those occupational roles. So when you think about a newborn, for example, there are certain occupations, certain functional behaviors that a newborn must be able to do or will die. So if you think in terms of what kinds of behaviors you expect out of a new baby, they need to be able to eat, they need to be able to poop in one and out the other, they need to be able to sleep, and they need to be able to move or interact with their environment in some way. So one of the things that occupational therapists get involved with neonates, for example, if they can't swallow, what's next? Tubes into every orifice of the body. So an occupational therapist is going to help to stimulate the newborn to get the swallow reflex going so that they can begin to eat and will thrive. Also, we want to make sure that neurology is working so that there are certain normal things that the body should be able to do without any other information coming in. And if any of those are lacking, we need to stimulate them so that the newborn can begin to interact with the environment in a normal way.
How do you stimulate them with your hand?
It may be hands-on.
Okay.
It often is hands-on. With modern medicine, and I'm not a neonatal specialist, so I don't know all of what they're doing now, there are so many technological advances that have happened that help to do some of that physical stimulation that's necessary. But it is to get the body working, because if the body's not working as a newborn baby, it's not going to thrive.
Okay. And so that goes, okay, then does it go into childhood? Or
yes.
You keep...
We can work with any age population, any.
Okay.
I haven't worked that much with children. I have worked with school age and grade school and high school age children, but I have not done a lot of work with younger than school age. But yes, if you think about any functional activity that has to be able to happen in order for someone to manage their life in the world, we're taking a look at that. One of the big areas that occupational therapy is done with children is handwriting, for example. Mm-hmm. If kids have a great deal of difficulty writing, they're going to have a lot of trouble in school, even though we live now with what I call the claw, our various devices that we keep in our hands, but kids still need to be able to use their hands in a functional manner, and so handwriting is one of them. Occupational therapists will help with that. They'll help with social interactive behaviors. The autism spectrum whole issue is a major area for occupational therapy involvement when social interaction skills are very weak, and that can mean that children are ostracized if they're not able to interact with their peers. So the occupational therapists who are specialists in that age range and in those problem areas really work a lot with the kids to help to normalize their behavior so that they can get along in the world.
Well, from what I gather, isn't autism on the rise? Because I've heard, like on NPR, they were talking about it 30 years ago. Maybe there was one child out of so many that had autism, and now it's...
I don't know the statistics. I do know we heard about it when I was in school back in the dark ages a long time ago. I don't know if it's really on the rise or if we just recognize more of it today, that we are able to determine when we see behaviors that are problems with kids, we know where those problems are coming from now. It's very possible that there is more, in fact, in this world, but I don't have the statistics, so I'm not sure.
I remember I was listening and I was surprised. You know,
it certainly is quite popular these days.
Right, that's what I was asking. Okay, so when you get to the high school ages, okay.
What might go on there?
What might go on there?
Again, there's a lot of social interaction issues with high school kids, learning disabilities, dyslexia, so many things that kids take for granted until they become problems. We recognize, for example, even in the younger years, but certainly in grade school, middle school, high school, if kids are having difficulty learning, sometimes it's a vision problem.
Yeah.
If they can't see and they can't recognize things that are on a board across the room, if their vision is that bad that they can't read, then their ability to comprehend and to learn a lot of materials won't happen. So one of the things that we've found is visual acuity and the whole vision spectrum, when that's addressed and vision is brought to a level that helps each person, and it's not only students, but certainly
Right.
adults as well, to be able to perceive what's going on in their environment, they make much more sense of it.
Well, what happens, like when do they call you in on it? I mean, the teacher thinks this may be a vision problem. She talks to the parents, right? I mean, it's got to be the teachers or the parents.
There
usually.
are occupational therapists that are on the team in schools.
Oh, okay.
That doesn't happen to be me. My specialty is more in the geriatric area, adult and geriatric, but there are occupational therapists who are on the team in schools. And so whenever there is a meeting of all of the administrators, teachers, anyone who's involved in setting an educational plan for a student, the occupational therapist is there making their contribution for perhaps an adaptation that might be needed in order to help the student learn better, tools that might be needed, or a different way of presenting material so they can understand it better. So OTs are part of the team.
See, I don't think we had those.
Probably not.
I don't think so.
Probably
I
not.
don't
Not in our youth, anyway.
No, I know we didn't. And then now you're going into the 20s and 30s, so where do you come in? I know you're in the geriatrics. We're going to get to that, but I wanted to cover this.
I've worked with a lot of young adults.
Okay.
My specialty area for most of my professional career has been the whole area of mental health. So looking at any of the behaviors that would interfere with daily living, which can include depression, can include bipolar disorder, can include drugs, alcohol use, anything that can interfere with the ability to manage everyday living. So we can definitely get involved at that level, and I used to. When I worked full-time in an inpatient setting, the youngest that we had in an adult unit was 18. So I certainly worked with 18, 19-year-olds at that point. And again, it was an issue of trying to find out what's going on, that they're not able to manage their daily living or their goals every day, whatever those might be. One of my specialty pieces is using a tool that we, as occupational therapists, designed and are still using today, that helps to measure cognition, the ability to understand, to comprehend
Right.
things. Because if we can't comprehend, we can't use the information that we know about to impact our daily behavior. And so that's a tool, it's an assessment tool that I'm still using today, and in fact I lecture about it at a local junior college about how to use that tool.
Okay, so you're using this tool and you're talking to the person, and you, let's say we're dealing with depression.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they choose an occupational therapist rather than a psychotherapist?
Again, the issue is the word function. A psychotherapist is going to be looking more into the thinking process, the brain, interpersonal behaviors, but isn't necessarily going to break down the tasks into microcosm to determine where is the problem. Where is it that someone is having difficulty managing their daily functions, whatever that might be.
Okay, so give me an example of that.
Okay, I've got an example of something that is hair-raising and actually took my breath away when it happened. I was working in an outpatient mental health clinic at one time, and one of the things that I was doing was an oral care group. So as a group, we had about 10 people in the room, I think, and we were working on tooth care, which for most people seems like you don't think about it, you just do it. It's just something that you do. So I had set up my room so that everyone had a white piece of paper, and they had a little glass with water, and they had a spit cup, and they had a brand new toothbrush. And new toothbrushes, even today, still come in a little box with cellophane wrapped around the outside of the box. I had the toothpaste. So my instruction to the group was, I took the cap off the paste and I demonstrated, I want you to squeeze out about an inch worth of toothpaste on your brush and then hand the toothpaste to your neighbor. Most of the people in the room were eager to get the toothpaste, and while they were waiting for the toothpaste, they opened their box, which I did not tell them to do. There was one man in the group who began, before the toothpaste got to him, brushing the 3 teeth that he had left in his mouth with the box.
Okay.
Even that really shocked me. Something that we assume, we take for granted, that people understand. You've got to take the object out of the box before you can start to use it. He had no awareness that that was a problem, among other things that were issues for him. But this was a person who had some major cognitive deficits. So he could not process what to do without being told step by step what and how to do. So it was no wonder that he only had a few teeth left.
Right. But how old was he?
I want to say mid-30s at the time.
I'm just asking, wouldn't someone have recognized this
You would think so.
before?
You would think so. But a lot of families, if someone is still living with their family, are kind of oblivious. Even their own behavior, family members' behaviors themselves might not be the best. I don't remember enough about him to know if he had been balky. You know, maybe some family members did try to show him how to do it better and he might have resisted. I really don't remember enough about him. But there's so many reasons that can happen. Also, not everybody winds up living with their family forever.
Right, right.
You know, by the time many kids are 18, 19, they want out. So if they can find a way to move out of the house, they're on their own in some fashion. And people don't always address those kinds of issues with them.
So from what I'm listening, I think you do a more holistic approach.
Yes.
Rather than a task-oriented approach. I mean, you're trying to get the whole person involved in this process.
Yes. We're looking at if there's musculature that's not working right, if there's something about neurology that's not processing information correctly. We're looking at all of the socio-personal skills that could interfere, and then we are teaching adaptations, if need be, or strategies in order to be able to do those daily living activities to the best that that person is able to manage them, which may be at a different level than you and I might do that same task.
Okay, I'm getting it. You know, no, when I listen to you talk, it's like you're part social worker, you're part therapist.
Yes.
You know, I mean, you're running around this whole wheel with all these other things.
And we do work with that kind of team. I loved it when I did a lot of joint work with social workers when I was in the medical model, when I worked in hospitals. I often did groups with a couple of social workers. And it was fun because we would come from such a different perspective, and yet the two of us putting our heads together and facilitating groups, we could get so much more out of the group because we came from different angles.
Yeah, oh, it's very, and I know you work with case managers now.
I do.
We'll talk about that and what they do. So let's move forward to you with the geriatric group.
Okay. When I was still working with the inpatient population, where I worked, my last full-time job, which I was in for about close to 18 years, one of our units was a geriatric medical unit. So you had to have a primary mental health diagnosis to be there. But as we well know, as we age, more and more things happen to us.
Right.
And so many of the people on that unit had all sorts of physical problems going on. So it was an opportunity for me to use everything that I had been taught in occupational therapy school about normal growth and development, aging issues, what happens to the body as we age that's normal, what happens that isn't normal, and how to recognize all of those things and how they all go together in order to impact daily function.
So tell me what you're into now. Give me some examples that you have, stories.
Now I'm working heavily with the dementia population. I'm supposed to be retired, as you know, it says in fine print, but my private practice continues. I'm selfish at this point in time in that I only take a few cases at a time, and I like to stay fairly close geographically to the Monrovia area. I have gone out of the area to do some assessments once in a while, but I really prefer to stay close by. And so I'm now working with people who are in various stages of dementia. Typically Alzheimer's, but it may not be. It could be some other form of dementia, which could be later stage Parkinson's. It could be Lewy body dementia. It could be
It's Lewy.
Lewy body. I'm not going to go into the technical neurology, but it's a specific part of the brain that is essentially dying. And because that part of the brain isn't working, many of the behaviors that we would take for granted are not at our disposal when the brain can't send us messages of how to do those things. So the bottom line is, if we're looking at dementia as an umbrella term, which is really what it is, we're looking at the behaviors that are starting to falter as we're aging. So that's the population that I'm working with now. And I have one client who is bedbound and has been for a long time. I have another person who's still living in their own home with caregivers in the home. And I have a third client who is in a memory care unit. I started working with that client when they were on the assisted living unit and now have gone to the memory care unit. Those two people are still pretty functional. They're still able to engage in a lot of daily activities that they are willing to do and are physically able to do. The person that is bedbound, just very briefly, what happened there, the family, I believe, had been doing their best to try to take care of that person at home. The person became more and more physically debilitated to the point that the family could not manage that person at home anymore, and so wound up placing that person. When I came into the picture with a case manager, who was the one who brought me in, we found this person with severe contractures, arms crossed over their chest, not able to move their arms away from their body particularly, legs kind of glued together and twisted to one side. The person was in bad shape physically from that standpoint. And what you're looking at there is a tremendous likelihood of skin breakdown with bed sores that are very difficult to manage when those begin to happen. The person was still able to eat real food, but not chewing the way they should. So there was a likelihood of needing to go to pureed food or soft, manageable food. And the caregivers didn't have a clue what to do. They were essentially taking care of this person's biological needs, making sure that they were dry, clean and dry. But there was the person, either lying in a wheelchair or in bed, wrapped up, doing nothing.
But let me ask you, because of this, why does it happen and nobody did anything? I mean, the caregivers were there and they're doing their job.
Once this person was in a facility, yes. But initially the person was at home. The family, as is not unusual of the general population, doesn't have the slightest notion what to do as behaviors decline, which is typical in any kind of dementia. They were doing their best to make sure this person was medicated, was getting food and water, but they didn't know what else to do until it got to the point where they couldn't physically manage this person at home anymore. And that is not at all unusual with the general population. So once...
let me ask you, does a person report this or?
It can be reported. It can
be reported.
There are many of us in the community that are mandated legal reporters. So if we see a situation where a person is, for example, being taken advantage of financially, let's say, that wasn't the case with this particular person that I'm referring to, but it's not unusual when someone is debilitated like that and can't make good decisions for themselves, that family or caregivers may start to take advantage of them. Well, I'll just take $2 and take care of their medicine and take $5 from me, kind of situation.
But aren't some of these people, these home care providers, licensed by the state?
Not necessarily. Now, the company for whom the caregivers work might be, but there are many caregivers out there who don't work for anybody except themselves. So it could be someone's aunt who loves people, just wants to be helpful. So comes in and says, I can bathe that person, I can comb their hair, I can sit with them and be a companion, I can take them to the bathroom. And those are skills that are not necessarily needed by someone who's licensed. And so you can have people who don't work for agencies, who just are nice people who want to help out, and then sometimes see an opportunity and take advantage of it. So yes, those of us who are mandated reporters can see things that could be called elder abuse, financial abuse. Mm-hmm. It can be elder abuse by neglect, by not following through. For example, when you see someone with missing teeth and poor oral care, if you let that go on, that can be considered abuse. Someone who, for example, won't let anybody cut their toenails, and the person winds up with claws and infections in their feet, for example, because their hygiene is so poor, that can be seen as elder abuse by neglect. And there are legal ramifications for those kinds of things. So if they are seen by me, by a licensed person, by a licensed social worker, by any number of licensed people, including the firemen, for example, if we see those things, we can report it.
Now Monrovia is doing a lot of work with dementia.
Yes.
And Nathan Kirschenbaum is very active in it, and you're part of this.
I am part of the committee, yes.
And we have there are 400 people who have been diagnosed that with dementia in Monrovia.
In the city of Monrovia? Wow, I didn't hear that number, but I'm not surprised.
I thought I heard the number 400, maybe.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that kind of number, but I know there are plenty of people who fly under the radar, again, because so many families may be embarrassed, afraid of being found out that they're not providing good care, embarrassed to let people know that there's a problem. So oftentimes people will kind of keep their relatives inside the house and not let anybody see or know what's going on. And so there are a lot of people that fly under the radar and we don't know about them. One of the things the Monrovia group, the Dementia Friendly, which is, by the way, a national initiative, right. Dementia Friendly, is attempting to do is reach out into the community with education for businesses, for neighborhoods, for small community groups, to let people know what to look for, what to recognize if you see someone with some behavioral problem, and rather than looking at them and saying, oh, they must be drunk, that's why they're lurching around, or they must be on high, they're on something, that's why they can't talk to me very well. That's not necessarily the case at all. And so the whole dementia-friendly effort is to help to educate people to what we might see behaviorally, and then how to intervene in a gentle, concerned way. For example, we might see a neighbor walking in our block and looking a little lost, and we might say, oh, Joe Blow lives 3 houses down the street, and we go back to our living room and don't pay any attention, rather than wondering why at 10:30 in the evening Joe Blow is walking down the sidewalk looking lost. So we might feel comfortable recognizing that there may be a dementia problem and just stepping outside and saying, "Hi, Joe. My name is Katie. I'm your neighbor. Is there something I can help you with? Or where were you going? Are you going someplace interesting?" And they may or may not be able to answer, but if we know where Joe Blow lives, that we might say, "Let me walk with you. There's a really interesting house 2 doors down there. Let's go see what's there." And we might walk with that person to their home, knock on the door. The family might be in the back of the house watching TV, assuming that Joe Blow's in bed.
Right.
And not really knowing that Joe snuck out the door. And we're able to walk up to the door and say, "You know, I found Joe walking in the neighborhood. I just wanted you to know." So it can be that simple of recognizing what's going on, and that's the dementia-friendly piece.
And we're going to be expanding that in Monrovia.
Yes, yes, we are. It's a 4-stage process of developing the dementia-friendly whole initiative. Monrovia has been named a dementia-friendly community. We have done some statistic gathering. We've asked all kinds of people to fill out a questionnaire, business people, neighborhood people, professional people, all kinds of people, as to what they may or may not know in the way of dementia care, anybody that they may know of within their family or their community. And so that was stage 2, was gathering the statistics, and stage 3 is formatting educational processes, connecting with various kinds of professional groups, including, for example, Alzheimer's LA, which is a wonderful resource, and then into stage 4 of conducting all kinds of community meetings with groups everywhere, professional groups, social groups, neighborhoods, businesses, all kinds of people, to educate people on what to look for, what to be aware of, and how to do some of those interventions.
Yeah, I know. With my aunt, I mean, it was very hard for me to see a woman who was 93 and really sharp, had her own accounting business, and the last year and a half, it's very hard because
you remember your aunt as the vibrant person she once was.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And
you try to intervene, and she doesn't want you to.
Right, exactly.
And that's where so much of it falls between the cracks of how much can you push to get involved, to help that person, versus the person says, "I don't need your help, get away."
That's what she tells us. And then sometimes, some days, she's very coherent. She seems all together, and 2 days later, it's all gone.
So you look at it over a period of time, and I know we've spoken about your specific situation a number of times. Over a period of time, what are the traditional behaviors that you're seeing? What is declining little by little? What kinds of things can she still do capably, but what kinds of things can she not do that perhaps put her life in jeopardy?
Yes, well,
financially and physically both.
Yeah, we went through the car thing, you know, and
when to turn in the keys. That's a whole other thing.
She finally one day just decided. I mean,
good for her.
Because we were trying to, you know, it was. But I just see, I mean, I've talked to people, and it's different with
everybody's different.
Everybody's different, and you feel so helpless.
Yes.
I mean, that's the whole thing with me, is that helplessness.
You want to respect the person who is still a person. They have rights to be a person. So you want to respect that, but at the same time, you're recognizing the financial dangers, the physical dangers, the social dangers, and you want to protect that person.
The physical dangers, you know, she lives in a 2-story, and the stairs are like this, but they're not that wide. And I worry about that, and then I say, can you, why don't we get you a lift to take you up and down? Too much money, and money's not the issue.
Yeah. So
you're it's very frustrating.
Yes, it is, and it's a skill that oftentimes involves a team
and an outsider who has that clarity,
and sometimes who has a an interpersonal way of dealing with someone, your aunt or whomever.
Yeah, right.
Because sometimes the family people don't want to hear from each other. So sometimes it takes a professional person who has no vested interest in anything to be able to come in the door and say, this is what I see and these are my suggestions. And then sometimes the person with the problems is a little more open to that kind of intervention because it's coming from someone that they don't know, they don't care about, rather than a relationship. And your aunt might say, Marlene, what are you trying to do? You're trying to rule my house? Get out, you know.
Exactly.
While a professional person sometimes has a little bit different viewpoint and a little different way of coming in the door.
Yeah, I've noticed that in every story. I mean, the stories are the same, but the people are different.
Mm-hmm.
So you're working with that.
Yes. We see so many behaviors that are all the same. They are. It's a different person. Many behaviors are similar. How people react to intervention is different depending on who they are.
Right.
Some people always were in control of their lives and they don't want to let go of that. Other people maybe were dependent type people through their whole life and they don't mind letting somebody else do for them. So it really is so different in the way of each person manages, but the problems are all very similar.
Right. I mean, I have a client, and her father was severely going through dementia, but she said when the social worker came out, he got all straight and he could answer all the questions.
Yes.
But if the social worker was there more than 10 minutes, 15 minutes, he could see
the decline.
The decline. But they seem to, it's very protective.
It's in the face of authority. Most people are like that. I mean, that started when we were kids, being called into the principal's office for heaven knows what. When we're in the face of authority, people tend to rise to the occasion, at least momentarily.
Right, exactly.
And then if you hang around them for a little while and you see how they try to put a round object in a square box kind of thing, or vice versa, you begin to see the decline if you're around them for a little while.
So we're working on that within Monrovia.
Yes.
And then the good news is about the AARP program.
Oh, that's fun. That's another one of my hats.
Yeah, that's why I want you to talk about that, because I think we have a large senior population.
Yes, we do.
And when you told me about it, I thought,
AARP, many people
I take the driving course.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Many people take a political viewpoint of AARP, and it's really important that we separate AARP, the organization, which is the largest organization in the United States that speaks for the needs of the senior population, versus an organization that has political leanings and may get involved that way. So my involvement is through something called the AARP Senior Smart Driver course. The fact that I'm an occupational therapist makes it easier for me to be a volunteer instructor. We are all volunteers in that program. And there is one piece specifically as an OT that I am involved with, but let me explain what the pieces are. The Smart Driver program is an 8-hour in-classroom educational piece that talks about how our bodies are changing, how our cars are changing, how the rules of the road are changing, how the roads themselves are changing, what's happening in terms of technology that's changing, what's different that we learn to drive a certain way and now you're supposed to do something else. So it's a way of bringing the older population into the now with a lot of that. The classes are geared to people 55 and over, but they're actually open to any licensed driver. So anyone who has a driver's license can come there. The information, as I say, is geared to people 55 and over, so it talks a lot about we experienced adults, which is the latest vernacular term.
Experienced
adults. And it's an 8-hour class, which can be done 8 hours all at once, or it can be done 4 hours and 4 hours, which is the class that I do. 4 hours one day, 4 hours the next day to complete that. And there is a discount to your automobile insurance when you complete the class. Connected with that is something called Car Fit. It's a free opportunity for you and your vehicle to go and get checked out to find out if physically you fit together or if you don't. Because many people buy a car because it looks gorgeous, but they can't see over the wheel, they can't reach their pedals. There's so many things that may not work.
And especially an older person getting into a very
low-slung car.
Yeah.
So during the Car Fit, there are 2 stations, if you will. One, the person stays in their car, and there are questions that are asked of the person. There's a checklist that's gone over. Do they know how to turn on their emergency flashers and how to turn them off? And where are various things that they need to know how to operate in the car? And can they see in their blind spots? So there's going to be people outside the car who are walking around in various places asking the driver, can you see me now? So finding out if the interior of the car is workable for the driver. Then station 2 is when they would come to me, and as an occupational therapist, I'm called a technician there. So there are skilled OTs who participate in this opportunity. I have the person get out of the car. So the first thing I'm looking at is, can they easily get in and out of the car? Or do they struggle? For example, a low-slung car, can they get out? Or is their seat made out of cloth and they stick to the cloth and have a terrible time turning in order to get out of the car? Then we'll walk all the way around the car. So I'm looking for dents, dings, anything that looks like they've been having some problems. And I'll say, how did this happen? Is this something you're aware of? Maybe they have a used car and the car was like that when they got it. But maybe they say, you know, I've been scratching my mailbox lately. I keep hitting the mailbox. I don't know why that is. And the lights go off for me that there's an issue with their driving. So we look all around the car. We look at things like their headlights. Are they looking frosted or are they clear? What can be done about things like that? And when we're finished with that walk around, I look at the checklist that happened at Station 1, and I also look at what I gathered from walking around the car with the person, and I might recommend some things for them, like a broader rear view mirror, for example, that will let them see much more out the back window than the normal size mirror. Yeah. Or an addition that can be put on the side of a side view mirror that will enhance what they can see out of the side, particularly if it's someone who has a neck problem and can't easily turn their head. So that makes it really difficult to see those blind spots. But with an addition on the side view mirror, it will open up some of that blind spot area.
So there are 2?
It can be.
So you have your regular...
Well, there's the rear view that's in the center of your car, inside.
Right.
And then your side views that are on either side. And there's adaptations that can be put on both of those side views also to help you see more out the side of your car without having to turn your head if you can't.
Are there special stores that you go to with that?
Some of them are available actually at automotive parts stores. Some of them. But some of them, yes, you do have to look online for specific places.
You don't tell people that you...
Yes, we do have a reference list that we can give them when they come through the inspection, that there are specific places that they might find some of the tools they need. I might recommend, for example, a swivel seat. It's a tool you can use in your own house, but it's wonderful in the car. Again, if your clothing sticks to the fabric of your seat, it's really hard for you to get in and out of the car. A swivel seat's like a little disc that you put onto the seat. When you sit down in your car, you sit down sideways, but now your little rear is on a swivel, so you just swivel in. And when you want to get out, you swivel out, and then it's much easier to get out of the car. Yes. So that's just one example of the kinds of things. There's a little handle.
Yeah, but that anybody could...
Anybody can get them. This is not a specialty tool.
Well, you don't think about these.
That's right.
I mean, you don't think about, like, my tush is going to go
that's
this
right.
way or
that's
that
right.
way. It just...
That's right. But that's why we're there, to make those recommendations.
Oh.
So we'll make suggestions. There's a little, I started to mention, there's a little tool that you can attach to a small it's like a D-ring. It's a solid piece that's in the door frame of every car. This little handle hooks on there very easily. So if you needed to push down, for example, when you're getting out of your car, you need a little extra leverage, you can take that from the glove compartment of your car, or many people have a little console next to the driver. They hook it on that little thing in the door frame. Now they've got something they can push down on. They just toss it back on their seat, close the door, away they go. When they want to get back in the car, it's laying there on the seat. They open the door, pick it up, put it back on the door frame. Now they've got something to hold on to, as well as the wheel when they're getting back in the car, and they throw that back in the console and away they go.
Do you ever recommend that the car that they have is not suitable for
Yes.
I know that's probably very difficult.
Yes. I cannot say get rid of this car. I can't do that.
Right.
But what I
piece of
can
crap,
do,
but-
yes, right. But what I can do is I can say you're really having so much difficulty looking over your wheel. You could get an adaptation that will help you sit higher in the car
Right.
if your automatic seat won't lift any higher. But have you thought, how old is this car? Have you thought about maybe replacing it? So we will have that discussion. I can't make somebody get rid of their car.
Well,
I can just educate them.
Well, I see like the old Cadillacs that people or the Lincolns, you know, things like that, and you shrink as you get
Yes.
older. So
Sorry to say.
I know. So you're here where you're supposed to be here,
Yes.
and they're going on
Yes.
this, right?
Yes. So we'll make recommendations of things like you really need to be able to see over your wheel and not be looking through it. Can
Exactly.
you see the front end of your car? Do you know where you're going? So we'll ask those questions and make those recommendations. And I have had quite a few people when we've done those car fit events say, you know, I've been thinking about getting a new car. I didn't realize how unsafe this was for me, and I'm not comfortable, and I think I'm going to go look at a new car. Another piece, that's another class that goes along with this whole thing. One of them is called We Need to Talk. It's a guided, with a volunteer leader, a guided discussion with family members and the person who really is on the cusp of seriously thinking about not driving anymore. But it's a guided discussion where we don't let the arguments happen. We don't let I won't listen to you kind of stuff happen.
Right.
It's an open discussion. That doesn't mean that the person's going to give up their keys that day, but it might give them more things to think about, particularly in terms of safety factors on both sides. And then the last one is something that's really new. California was on the cutting edge of this. It was a pilot program that is now spreading across the country called Smart Driver Tech, TEK. It is a 90-minute free classroom opportunity. The man who teaches the local classes, he's teaching in Arcadia, I think he's also teaching in Duarte. He's crazy. He is more fun. But the entire 90 minutes goes over all the new technology that's available in cars today. Much of that technology is standard now. It's not stuff you ask for. It comes with the car, or a few other things that you might want to have. Many people, not just experienced adults, but many people who purchase a new car will turn off a lot of that stuff that isn't automatically on because they're afraid of it. But most of that technology is there for safety, to help us be safer and better drivers, particularly the older population, but it's good for anyone. And so if you already have a car and you don't know what that stuff is, he teaches you what it is and what to do with it. And he also goes over a lot of it, so if you are in the market for a new car, you know what you're looking at. You can ask about it. Does this car do X, Y, Z? What's standard in it? So you know what you're looking at now when you go to get a new car, and you can make a much better judgment.
So how do they get, with everything we've talked about
Yes.
today, how do they get in touch with you?
With me personally,
Well, I mean, since you're still doing your occupation.
how many hats? Yes.
Okay. Your occupational therapy
Yes.
and the AARP.
The best way to reach me personally is with my professional phone number, which is 626
Look here.
359 1055. 626-359-1055. That's my professional phone number, best way to get a hold of me. If you're interested, though, in things like the AARP Senior Smart Driver classes or the CarTac or any of those, CarFit, if you look online, just Google them, and calendars will come up. You put in your zip code, and you'll find out where there are classes near you.
Or they can call you if they're not computer
Or
literate.
they can call me, and I'll look it up. That's
You're
right.
not computer
That's
literate.
right.
Okay. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is Marlene Gibb with What Do You Do?